The sulfur from the flare still lingered in Mark's nose when he heard the new sound. Low growls, multiple this time, circling from the left. His blood ran cold. Wolves. He didn't see them at first, just the gleam of shifting eyes in the undergrowth, the flicker of gray fur darting between trees. But he knew the signs. A pack was gathering, drawn by the scent of blood and weakness. The mother bear let out a hoarse roar, pushing herself up with visible effort. Her breath came in labored huffs, her injured leg trembling beneath her. She planted herself beside the cub again, swaying slightly, then bared her teeth at the encroaching forest. Mark scanned the area. He had one more flare, maybe enough to confuse the predators, but not enough to scare them all off. And he knew too well. Wolves weren't like lone scavengers. They tested, waited, struck as a unit. One wrong move, and this clearing would become a killing ground. He dropped his pack and fumbled through it, grabbing the final flare. Then he spotted something nearby. A half-burned fallen branch from lightning strike. He grabbed it, clicked his lighter, and sparked it to life. Smoke hissed upward. The mother bear didn't glance at him. Her focus was absolute, fixed on the trees. Then came the first lunge. A gray wolf shot from the side, fangs glinting. The bear met it with a thunderous swing of her paw, flinging it aside in a blur of fur and motion. But another followed, and another. The pack was not deterred. Mark launched the flare directly at a cluster in the bushes. It exploded in a spray of red fire, sending two wolves skittering backward. He waved the burning branch wildly, shouting, trying to appear larger, more dangerous. The wolves hesitated. The bear roared again, louder this time, and took a step forward despite her bleeding leg. Two wolves lunged. She caught one midair, crushed it against the dirt. The other bit deep into her flank before she flung it off. Mark's chest heaved. He grabbed a stone and hurled it, striking another wolf in the side. "Back! Get back!" For a breathless 30 seconds, the clearing was chaos. Flames, snarls, shouting, fur and blood and motion. And then, as quickly as they'd come, the wolves retreated. Not because they were beaten, but because they sensed something worse. Desperation. And desperation fights hardest. They slinked into the trees, melting back into shadow. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mark dropped to one knee, sweat pouring down his face, heart hammering in his ears. The smoke from the flare curled upward like a fading battle cry. The bear collapsed beside her cub. For a moment, Mark was frozen, staring. The mother bear's side was heaving, her breaths shallow and uneven. Blood seeped from her new wound. Her head was lowered, snout resting beside the cub, but her eyes stayed open, locked onto Mark's. He moved slowly, step by step. Kneeling beside her, hands trembling, he reached into his bag and pulled out the last of his bandages. "I'm going to help you," he murmured, "just like I helped your cub." The bear didn't move. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Warm, coarse fur met his palm. No resistance. She didn't flinch. There, in the fading twilight, he cleaned her wound. He didn't have stitches, just gauze, antiseptic, a strip of shirt, and his own clumsy hands. But the bear stayed still. Even when he pressed into the torn flesh, even when she winced in pain, she let him. And something shifted. A line, invisible and ancient, dissolved between them. Not man and beast, just two living souls trying to keep each other alive. Mark knew they couldn't stay. More predators would come. The smell of blood was everywhere. And the cub, still breathing but barely, needed more than he could give out here. He needed to get them out. Fast. He scanned the clearing and saw an idea take shape. 2 long branches, his tarp, a bit of rope. He fashioned a crude stretcher, just strong enough to carry the cub. With some coaxing, he eased the tiny bear onto it. The mother grunted once but didn't stop him. Then he pointed. "Come on. We have to go." She didn't understand words, but she understood urgency. She limped after him, close, watching every move. And so began their trek. Mark pulled the stretcher with everything he had. The mother followed behind, keeping close, protective yet alert. They moved through the forest in a slow, ragged procession. Man, bear, cub. As night fell, so did the rain. A soft drizzle at first, then heavier until it became a relentless downpour. Mud sucked at Mark's boots. His clothes clung to his body, soaked and freezing. His arms burned from dragging the stretcher. He stumbled more than once, catching himself on roots, rocks, branches. Every step was harder than the last. But each time he fell, he felt something. A nudge. The bear. She would push gently at his side with her nose, snort softly, stand beside him until he got up. She never moved too far ahead, never left him behind. She was saving him as much as he was saving her. And in the strangest way, it felt right. Not like punishment, like penance, like purpose. Mark's thoughts drifted as they walked, back to the man he'd been, the hunter, the killer, the one who never paused to see the soul in the eyes of the creatures he tracked. He remembered the trophies on his wall, the blood on his hands. He remembered the day he stopped, the doe and her fawn, the way the fawn cried. He never picked up the rifle again. But he never found peace either. Until now. Until this moment, dragging a stretcher through a storm beside a bear who should have torn him apart. And he realized something. Fear had ruled his life, not just of animals, but of himself, of the harm he could do, the pain he had caused. But fear didn't live here anymore. Only connection, only survival, only something deeper. Just before dawn, they crested a small ridge, and Mark saw it. The tower. Wooden, weather-beaten, the old ranger lookout. He almost collapsed. Instead, he fumbled in his bag and pulled out his last signal. A red flare. He aimed it at the sky and fired. The streak arced high, exploding into a brilliant red bloom over the treetops. He turned to the mother bear, soaked and swaying, eyes hollow from pain. He knelt beside the cub, still alive. Barely. Relief surged through him, only to be cut short by a sudden growl from the mother. She spun, positioning herself in front of the cub again. Mark turned quickly and froze. Figures moved in the trees. Voices. Men. Armed. Hunters. Coming closer. Mark's voice cracked as it rang through the clearing. He threw himself in front of the bear, arms outstretched, soaked to the bone, body trembling with exhaustion. The hunters froze. 3 of them, figures in camo and flannel, rifles raised, eyes wide. One had his finger already on the trigger, the barrel pointed straight at the bear's chest. "She's not attacking," Mark cried, chest heaving. "She's protecting her cub, that's all. She saved me." There was a beat, a silence thick with confusion, disbelief, and raw adrenaline. Rain tapped gently against the rifle barrels. Steam rose off the bear's soaked fur. The mother bear didn't move, neither did the hunters. Mark took a step forward. "Listen to me," he pleaded. "She brought me to her cub. She led me through the forest. She let me help them." One hunter narrowed his eyes, his grip tightening. "Are you insane? That's a bear, a wild animal." "She's a mother," Mark snapped. "Look at her. She's wounded. She fought off wolves last night to protect her cub. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for her." Still, the man didn't lower his gun. Then it happened. A soft sound, barely audible over the rainfall. A whimper from the stretcher. The cub stirred, letting out a tiny cry. Weak, vulnerable, almost human. The hunter holding the gun shifted. The sound sliced through the moment like a blade, melting the edge off the standoff. The others looked at one another. For all their experience, their bravado, there was something in that sound that shook them. Something that didn't belong in a target. It belonged in a cradle, or a hospital, or a heart. The man with the gun blinked. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered it. The leader, a burly man with a salt and pepper beard, stepped forward. "Where were you headed?" he asked Mark. "There's a ranger station," Mark panted. "Half a mile. They need medical help." The leader glanced at the cub, then at the bear who hadn't moved an inch from her protective stance. Finally, he nodded. Then let's get moving. The next few hours were a blur. With the hunter's help, Mark and the mother bear led the way to the outpost. A radio call summoned the local wildlife rescue team. Within minutes, a team of vets and rangers arrived, startled but professional, armed with sedatives, stretchers, and equipment. It took all of them working together to stabilize the cub. The mother bear, growling softly but too weak to fight, was sedated carefully after Mark stayed near, whispering, calming her. Even then, she never took her eyes off him. As the drugs took hold, she blinked slowly, once, twice, then held his gaze for one long, impossible moment. There was no rage in her, no wildness, just something ancient, something grateful. Then her eyes closed. Mark stood outside the Wildlife Center's glass wall, leaning on a post for support. His hands were scraped raw. His ribs throbbed. A shallow cut above his brow trickled dried blood. But he didn't move. He watched through the glass as the vets worked under bright lights. The cub was on a table, tubes and monitors surrounding it. The mother was nearby, asleep in a large containment bed, her flank rising and falling in rhythm. The hunter, who had nearly pulled the trigger earlier, walked up beside him but said nothing. Eventually, the man cleared his throat. "You really risked everything." Mark didn't look at him. "She didn't give me a choice." A pause. "Maybe that's the point," the man muttered. "Maybe she did." Weeks passed. The story made headlines in small wildlife circles. Hunter turned photographer saves bear family. A few interviews, a radio segment, but Mark declined most of it. He wasn't interested in becoming a symbol. He wasn't interested in praise. Something had shifted inside him, something deeper than he could explain, something that couldn't be measured in clicks or shares or newspaper ink. He just wanted to go back, not with a camera, not with a rifle, just himself, and something to give. He returned to the same stretch of forest, where it had all begun. The log he stepped over, the tree scratched with claw marks, the clearing where silence had once meant danger. He brought food, berries, fresh fish, and water. He laid them carefully on the mossy earth, not as bait, not as payment, as thanks. Then he sat on the log and waited, for hours. Birdsong filled the air. A squirrel scurried past. The wind whispered through the trees. Nothing came, and still he waited. The sun was dipping low, turning the leaves gold when he heard it. A rustle, a heavy breath. Mark turned slowly. From the shadows between the trees, she emerged. The mother bear. She moved with strength now. Her coat had recovered its shine. Her step was sure and silent. Behind her, waddling with clumsy grace, was the cub, now larger, healthier, bright-eyed. Mark didn't move. He didn't speak. The mother bear looked at him, long and still. Not a sound passed between them. But something did. A connection beyond language, beyond instinct. A soul, deep recognition. She blinked once. Then she grunted. Low, soft. Almost the same sound she'd made the first day they met. She turned. The cub followed, and together they disappeared into the woods. Mark stood in the silence, heart full, throat tight. He didn't chase, didn't call, just watched and understood. As he turned to leave, the wind shifted through the trees, and he whispered, half to the forest and half to himself. "I came here afraid of the wild, but what found me was grace in fur and claws."